I'm on my way out of town for work again, which means A, I'm at Newark Airport, and B, since I'm in Terminal A, I want to kill someone. I've been an active business traveler for about 10 years, and throughout that entire time, TSA has been unable to figure out exactly how to operate more than one security line at a time at this particular terminal in this airport. Not exactly a confidence booster for the agency. Now, this trip was the one time that I felt like I could at least relate to musicians and comedians, because I understood at least one aspect of their plight, and that is, if you don't work, you don't eat. I'm off to Minneapolis this time, and I'm sure that normally the city is as beautiful as the official website claims, but this is March. Winter is coming to a close, or I should say that it's supposed to be coming to a close. Now, it's not just Minneapolis. Everywhere I've gone this month, the weather has been a little bit screwy. And I have a big problem this week, because this particular week I needed to go from Minneapolis, then back to New Jersey for another event, and then on to Washington, D.C. for my third and final program of the week. My travel isn't always this busy, but sometimes it happens. And the fees that I get from this particular week of trips, that was literally going to make my month. You see, this is the part of my type of business travel that people don't understand. If I don't get to the venue, I don't work. And if I don't work, I don't get paid. It's not like there's some other income stream that I can draw on. If Mother Nature keeps me away from work, I'm screwed. So I do what I have to do to get to the venue. A couple of years ago, for example, when a hurricane was set to hit New Jersey, I rented a car and drove 11 hours to Cincinnati so I could get to work ahead of the storm. That's what you got to do to pay the bills. So my usual disgust with Terminal A this time was mixed with apprehension. Snow was coming to Minneapolis, and I needed to get into the city quick. And luckily, it worked out. When I arrived in Minneapolis, there was the usual travel experience. I enjoyed the view of the city from the back of a taxi. And as soon as I got to the hotel, I pumped the heat up to 1,000. That's what happens when your wife wants to save money on utilities, so she makes you leave the heat at 50 all winter. Sorry, Marriott, blame my wife for your heating bill. Minneapolis happens to be a lot like Vancouver in one way: the skyways. The place is so cold in the winter that they've created a network of passageways that allow you to traverse much of the downtown area without ever having to leave. They connect the office buildings and the malls, and they make life pretty convenient. So here's an interesting reality check. Inside one of these malls, you'd see this water fountain. Now, you might see it as just that, an interesting interior water fountain. I, however, see and hear a reminder that I'm 50 years old. Hashtag, where's the bathroom? Anyway, I got into Minneapolis early to beat the snow, which meant that I had a lot of time to wander. It was just a matter of time until the storm rolled in, and this could be a problem for me. Not only, like I said, did I have to speak in Minneapolis, but I needed to make it out the very next day so I could get to my event in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and oh yeah, there was snow expected in Jersey as well. The good thing is that the forecast was calling for snow in almost the entire state except Atlantic City. That area was supposed to be spared. Something about it, being different on the shore, they expected rain, whatever. That's what Al Roker said. So I spent all day wandering the skyways of Minneapolis. And what was I doing? Watching the weather. Oh, and I had a couple of treats from places that I haven't seen in years. Well, first it was just wet. Then the snow started. Then it started sticking to the streets a little. Then it started sticking to the streets a little more, and even a little more. By the time the evening came, it was a full-blown blizzard. Well, I made it into town. Now the question is, can I make it out? Although I was apprehensive, I nonetheless went to bed hopeful. Look, I wasn't leaving until late in the afternoon the following day, and this was Minnesota, a place where they're used to this kind of weather. So, the next morning I stuck to my routine. I hit the gym. It was, by the way, a lot more busy than I expected. Turns out that Target was having a corporate get-together, and I guess Target employees like to stay fit. After I worked out, I grabbed my coffee, threw on my usual speaking apparel, and did my thing for Minnesota continuing legal education. I enjoyed the lunch they bought me, and then I wandered outside. Oh! Yes, it was cold and snowy, but it was clear. I was on my way out of town. I cannot begin to tell you the elation that I felt. Maybe it was more relief, I don't know, but I decided to allow myself a little treat at the airport. Well, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. Of course, I'm always a little tentative when it comes to the weather, and that's why this was the most beautiful sight of the day. This is the closed airplane door. That means it's pretty much certain I'm getting out of town. So I made it back to Jersey. I immediately grabbed a rental car and headed from the airport to Atlantic City, where I was staying for the night.
Well, it turns out I am now 5-star status. Pretty impressive, huh? Basically, what that means is I get to go to the lot and I get to pick out the car that I want. Not from the premium section. I'm not that big of a sex symbol yet.
The next day, I had to speak for a group at the Atlantic County Country Club. The group in Jersey put me up at the Tropicana, which was nice. It's got a nice shopping area attached. Incidentally, my room was at the end of the longest hotel hall I've ever seen in my life. But you know what? I didn't care. Because when you looked out the hotel window, do you know what you didn't see? Snow. The only thing you saw was rain. That's right, not snow, rain, and that was super cool to me. I spent the next morning lounging around what really was one of the biggest hotel rooms I've ever had. And then I drove out to the country club. Of course, that's when I should have seen the omens. The wind was heavy as heck. The roads were deserted, and the causeway leading off of the island was completely shut down. As soon as I made it to the country club, that's when it started. At first, it was just a dusting. The sand traps were covered in snow, and it was actually kind of pretty. But then, the blizzard came. I couldn't even get a good picture of how bad it was snowing because when it was coming down its hardest, I was speaking. I could see it all unfolding outside the window where I was giving my talk. It was blinding white. And all I could think of was, 1, Al Roker knows nothing, and 2, there's no way I'm getting to DC tonight. All throughout my talk, instead of thinking about what I was supposed to be saying to these lawyers, I was praying that my credit card bills this month wouldn't be off the hook. By the time I was finished speaking, the snow had stopped, but the roads were a disaster. Luckily, I rented an SUV, so I was able to make it to Philly. I parked my car in the Hertz lot, did the obligatory once-over to document that I had dropped it off in good condition, and I headed into the train station where I dropped off my keys. And then I waited in 30th Street Station. And waited, and waited, and waited. The train slowly proceeded over the snowy tracks and got into the station 3 hours late. Eventually I made it to DC, where there was no snow, and there wouldn't be any snow. I did my talk, and I made it to the airport without incident. And when I boarded the plane and got comfortable for my short flight home, I could not help but thinking, this was a rough one. I mean, I love what I do, and I'm not complaining about traveling. But the anxiety this week was a bit too much. The downside of missing those gigs was so huge, and I had no control over the situation. But it was over, and I made it, although I did suffer one more indignity. You see this bus? This is the bus to the airport parking lot in Newark Airport where I leave my car. I hopped on it and went about 100 feet when I realized I didn't take my car to the airport this time. So I jumped off and Ubered it home. After that, I stayed off the road for a few days.